Have you ever wondered how heating and air companies are charging you? Maybe you are about to hire someone, or you've already hired someone and you got the work done and you got a bill and you're scratching your head looking at the invoice. Today's video, I want to cover some of the ins and outs of how pricing is done in our trade, things that maybe you didn't know, and things that I think you should know, things that you can ask your contractor before even hiring them that might protect you. Who am I? My name is Josh. I owned a heating and air company for over a decade, and now I train other contractors in our trade on how to do it better. But aside from all of that, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you avoid some of the pitfalls that a lot of homeowners fall in when dealing with contractors. Let's dive into this. How is pricing done? And the first thing you will notice about our trade is a lot of companies use something that's called flat rate. And what that basically means is they're going to charge you a one set fee, a price to do a job, no matter how long it takes them. It can take them 10 minutes or 10 hours, and this is their price. Now, you might say there are some pros and cons to that, and you would be right. If it does end up taking them 10 hours, and as long as they don't come back to you and say, oh, well, now we've incurred some extra costs, and now we need to charge you more than we originally said we were going to charge you. Hypothetically, the way this is supposed to work and the way they will usually market it to you is this is our price regardless of how long it takes us. What's interesting though is how a lot of the companies come up with what their flat rate should be. In my mind, if you've got a company that uses a system similar to how many mechanic shops use, meaning a lot of mechanic shops in the US will look at a job, right? They'll say, okay, to replace the brakes on a car, it should take this many hours and the parts are going to be this much, and we're going to add some extra so there's profit for the company. However they do that, but they kind of add it all together, and then that's how they figure out their fee. And there are companies, heating and air companies, that do just that they come up with flat rate pricing for some particular jobs, so that way they can give you an upfront flat rate price based on those numbers. I was one of those contractors. We had a dozen or so, one or two dozen jobs that we would provide a flat rate price up front on. This is how much it's going to be to do that job. And aside from those, say 2 dozen flat rate jobs that we had at our company, then we would go into something called time and material pricing, which I'll get to in just a moment. But what's interesting about flat rate pricing with a lot of heating and air companies is they don't do it that way. They use a book. They use some program that they bought online, or they use some CRM and it's built into there, but they're basically having someone that's not in your market. They don't know what the labor rates are. They don't know any of the other numbers in our area, the cost of living and the cost of doing business and the cost of the insurance that the company's got to pay and so on, right? Payroll taxes and the actual labor of the technician that's on site and all of those things. Instead, they come up with some pie in the sky number that will ultimately make that company a lot of money. And I will say, I will caution you from those companies. You're going to, in some cases, pay 2, 3, 4, even 5 times the price to do a certain job than you would have hiring someone that was charging you what I would call a fair rate. Point being, not everyone that charges a flat rate is bad, but some are. Some programs out there that these heating and air companies can subscribe to or purchase, they are only for one thing, and that is to help the company make money. Now, I'm not one of those that thinks it's a bad thing. I think that a heating and air company should be profitable, right? You want your heating and air company to still be in business 10 years later, right? But if they are simply teaching that heating and air company how to take advantage of people in the process, which is what ends up happening with a lot of companies, when you see these companies go from 2 employees and then all of a sudden within 2 or 3 years, they've got 20, 30, 40 40 trucks on the road, and we're talking just a handful of years later, I'm not saying they're up to no good, but something could be off there. I'm probably ruffling feathers here, but let's be honest, it wouldn't be the first time. So let's get off of flat rate pricing for a moment. I think you kind of get the concept and you kind of get how folks can do it right and fair, but they can also do it unfair to you. The next way is pretty traditional, and it's still used even today by a lot of contractors, and it's simply called time and material. They're going to figure out how much time, how much the material is. And the one thing I'll say about time and material companies is it would be great if you could get some semblance of an idea of what that is going to be up front, if possible. You don't want a meter running is the point here. If they are charging you time and material and y'all have discussed that and you've figured that out, you may want to get something called a GMP, which stands for guaranteed maximum price, just so you're not paying the guy to stand out back to smoke cigarettes and run to do another job and the meter's still running. A lot of homeowners don't like time and material for that reason. And I think if you are just very clear and upfront with your contractor that either having a GMP or, hey, here's when you're clocking in and out. If you're charging me for your time, it needs to be very obvious of when I'm being charged, when you're on the clock here. Now, I will caution you, if you are one of those homeowners and you're going to pick and prod and you're going to be hard on your contractor, that could have consequences. When I was in business for myself, if I had a homeowner that was what I would call nickel and diming me, and they were saying, oh no, that actually took you only 42 minutes and you're charging me for the full hour there, I would, in a lot of cases, because we were very fair with that, right? I always felt like even if we were rounding up a little bit for one reason or another, maybe we had to run and get a part and our meter was still running, if you will, we're still working on your job, we're going to get you a part. And a lot of homeowners didn't like that. So I always felt like as long as the homeowner was fair, then I would be fair. So as long as you understand that, as long as you understand that if you're going to confront your contractor and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with time and material or what you're charging for one reason or another, understand that could create a problem, and it could create a problem where that bridge may be burned. Now, you may be okay burning that bridge. Maybe you feel the contractor already burned it, but I just want you to be aware of that. I think it would be great in a lot of scenarios where even if it's time and material, so if the contractor is going to use a time and material scenario to figure up the price of that job, if they could still give you an upfront price, that would be ideal. And then finally, from flat rate pricing and time and material pricing, there is tiered pricing. I used to work at a company that would take the cost of the materials and they would have multipliers on that, and there would be tiers to that multiplier, meaning if the job was only going to be, say, under $200, the multiplier was much higher. Right? So let's say the materials were only $50. Well, they're going to multiply that by, say, 5. And so their price is going to be $250 for that. But if the materials are, say, $1,000, their multiplier might only be, say, 1.3 or something like that. Hopefully that makes sense. I've seen other formulas out there, companies that will plug in their pricing and that has formulas in a spreadsheet and it comes up with that flat rate price for them. I think all of that is okay. Again, as long as the company is transparent and upfront, even if they're premium prices, as long as they're not hitting you with some sort of something on the back end, something that surprises you, that's what we don't want. Another thing to note is some companies will change their prices based on how busy they are. So they charge higher prices in the summer, lower prices when they're not busy in their shoulder season. I've heard contractors argue that, hey, Josh, that's supply and demand. I'm in more demand, so I should be able to raise my prices. And I'm not going to get into that whole argument. It's not actually what supply and demand is. I think if a contractor is good and they're a good businessman, they shouldn't be that non-busy in their shoulder season anyway. They should be busy year round, and their prices should be premium prices if they do premium work anyway. So this whole thing where they're changing their prices dramatically based on how busy they are has always been odd to me, but I've never had that struggle. When we had our business, we stayed busy all year round, whether it was super hot outside or if it was only 50 degrees. Our phone was always ringing and we had more work than we could keep up with. I just think you need to know that when you're dealing with a contractor, especially if it's a repair you can wait on. If it is a hot July day, maybe waiting until October, if you can, for that to be done might save you a few bucks. And I'm going to get to in just a moment some questions you can ask your contractor, but I do want to preface it by saying this. I don't think anything I'm going to say in this video is going to change how your contractor charges you, right? I'm not going to say to you, hey, say this to the contractor and they're going to whip into shape and they're not going to charge you so much for that. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to wave a magic wand for you. If I could, I would wave a magic wand and you would hit the subscribe button because you're getting so much value out of this. But even if I can't change how they're going to charge you, what I can do is hopefully make you see red flags that you would not have seen before. So if you have a company that's not willing to provide you an upfront price, for example, that could be a red flag. Let's dive into a few questions you can ask some contractors, especially if you are getting multiple bids on something or you're shopping around. You can ask a contractor and get a feel for maybe how they're going to charge you. We've already talked about flat rate and tiered pricing and time and material. I think you can be a good customer to work for and be polite and nice and they love you, and you still ask them, hey, how do you charge me? Do you charge flat rate pricing? Do you charge time and material? I think that is something appropriate to ask. It may not affect whether you choose them or not. In fact, I would argue it shouldn't, but some of you, it will. You may not want to hire someone that keeps the meter running, or you may not want to hire someone that does a high flat rate price for only a 10-minute job. The next question would be, how much do you charge to do fill in blank? So pick out a simple repair, something that you could use as a apples to apples comparison. So you could say, hey, this system has a 35 by 5 microfarad capacitor. How much do you charge to replace that? And most companies will tell you up front, we charge this much to replace that. We might charge you a diagnostic fee or a trip fee to come out to your home. And then however they charge you, they should be able to relay that information to you up front. Another question you could ask is, do you provide any discounts? So are there discounts if I'm in your maintenance program? Are there discounts if I'm a military veteran? If I'm a senior citizen, an emergency responder? There are companies that will provide discounts for folks that fall in different categories. Do you provide a discount if I'm handsome, right? I never got that discount. Maybe you can. And then finally, a question I think would be interesting for you to ask. And I was just helping a friend the other day. He doesn't live near me, but he knows that I know a little bit about heating and air, and he was dealing with a contractor who misdiagnosed a TXV. I told him that it didn't sound like it was the TXV to me, but I wasn't the local contractor, so he ended up going with what they recommended, and I couldn't fault him for that, right? And so they ended up replacing the TXV. It was not the problem. And then now they want even more money to replace the compressor. And so here's the question you could ask that contractor, and that is, are there any refunds if you misdiagnose something, right? And of course, they're going to argue, well, I didn't misdiagnose it, but paint a scenario to them and that, hey, if you replace a part and it doesn't actually fix the issue, I'm not saying you were wrong. Maybe that part is bad and there's another part bad, but do I get any refund there? Do I get any refund on, say, the labor? And I believe a good contractor might actually say, yes, we might give you a few bucks back because now you're going to have to either buy a new system or put more money into that system and go with an even bigger repair, whatever the case may be. See if they will give you some insight of the future if something happens there. Another thing that comes to mind that we used to do is if a customer was interested in indoor air quality products, so there's air cleaners and air filtration, there's all kinds of things out there, right? And so if we would install a product for them and they ended up not liking it, or it didn't fix the issue. Let's say we added a humidifier and it just didn't feel as humid to them, and they're like, never mind, I don't want the humidifier now. What does that look like? Do I get a full refund? Do I get maybe a partial refund where you're going to have to pay for the labor because we actually did the humidifier, but we will now remove the humidifier or air cleaner, or whatever the product is, and give you a refund on that? Or do they simply do no refunds? That's all something that you can cover as well. Finally, last thing, I'm sorry this is a longer video, but I thought this was an important topic. And the last thing is, please make sure everything is in writing. Maybe they're nice and maybe they're saying all the right things. I literally was just helping someone the other day on our website, newhvacguide.com, and they were telling me it seemed like such a nice young man and he was saying all the right things, and everyone is nice until they're not. Any good contractor is going to be nice and also be willing to put something in writing, especially if they're confident in what they're telling you. If they're going to give you an upfront price or be willing to give you a refund on something or a discount on something, all that should be disclosed up front, agreed upon, and in writing. I can tell you the state I'm in, technically you're supposed to have a contract even on the smallest of repairs, but I know not every state is the same. What are your thoughts? Are you dealing with a contractor and they're charging too much, or you were surprised on how their pricing worked? I'd love to hear about that down in the comment section of this video. If you like this video, I think you'll like this one even more. It's where I talk about air conditioning contractors are getting sued and why. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button for more HVAC tips. We'll see you next time.